executive session of the August 27th, 2013 Fairfield Town Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We have 6 members present, so we can go ahead and get started. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and vote. The first item on our agenda, just to take them in order, is the minutes from August 13th, 2013. I think everybody here was at that meeting on August 13th? Yes. So I think we could take the minutes with 6 members present. Did everybody get a motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi, second by Commissioner Calabrese. In the scorebook. Any comments or discussion of the minutes? Everything else seem accurate. You can vote with 6. Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of August 13th, 2013, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No one is opposed. The minutes are approved unanimously. The next item on our agenda requires that we go into closed executive session specifically to discuss pending litigation. Do I have a motion to go into closed executive session? Moved by Mr. Alessi, second by Commissioner Jacobson. All in favor of going into closed executive session, say aye. 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 Opposed? No one's opposed. We'll do that. We returned from closed executive session where we discussed pending litigation. No motions were made, no votes were taken. Do I have a motion now to go back into regular executive session? Motion by Mr. Kennelly, second by Commissioner Alessi. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No? Okay, we're back in executive session. The next item on our agenda is new application to recommend to public hearing, 2500 Hillside Road, subdivision application of MTM properties for 2 lots in a AAA zone.
This is just the first notice of a new application for this particular subdivision. You will see this again in an open space referral capacity in the near future, but it's just, I'll say the same thing for the items A, B, and C. They're all recently submitted applications and would require public hearings.
They're all applications that require public hearing. Okay, on 2500 Hillside Road, subdivision application of MTM properties for 2 lots in a AAA zone. Do I have a motion?
Public hearing.
Motion of public hearing by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Kennelly. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Sorry.
Aye.
I should have asked for discussion. Next item is 600 Hoydens Lane, subdivision application of AFM properties for 2 lots in a AAA zone.
Same, I have no...
Any motion?
I'll move to
Motion public hearing by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Parker. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No one is opposed. It's moved to public hearing. And lastly, we have 4800 Congress Street, re-subdivision application of Serge and Barbara Vinograd for 3 lots in a AAA zone. Motion by Commissioner Kennelly and second by Commissioner Alessi. I get them all for you? Okay. Any discussion on this one? No. All in favor of moving it to public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And it's moved to public hearing. Next, we move to old business. Zoning regulation amendment, application of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to amend Section 2.7, access and rear lots, and Section 5.2.1, access. We had a public hearing on August 13th. There is no expiration date. However, before we talk about this one, I will say that Commissioner Jacobs and Commissioner Wagner were here as regular members of the commission. Both of them asked us immediately after the hearing that they would not be here this day. They would like to be part of any discussion or decision on this application. So before we discuss it, I'm just saying our recommendation is that we table it, and we'll leave it on the table. It'll be taken up at the next meeting. It doesn't come off the table until we actually discuss it.
I move to postpone it to a date certain, September 9th.
Well, okay, postpone to a date certain.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Parker. You were going to second it too. You were going to first. You were going to move it. Okay, good.
I'll third it.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can postpone it to a date certain. That's fine. Yeah. Any motion that doesn't require us voting on it tonight without those 2. Okay. Any discussion on these motions, which is just to postpone it to September 9th? It's actually
Next is the 10th.
It's actually the 10th.
Okay.
Next regular
Whatever
schedule.
the next.
I'm just looking at my calendar.
Yeah, it is the 10th.
Next regular schedule.
Yeah. Okay. Pat made it and Sally seconded it. I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacobson made it, Commissioner Parker seconded it. Any discussion on the motion to postpone? All in favor of postponing it to September 10th, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's postponed. If you were here for that one, we won't be taking that up tonight. Next item we have is 120 and 144 Tuller Road, subdivision application of Christopher Coco and Malgorzata Pierre-Karski and Jack and Mary Lou Casper for 7 lots in an R3 zone. We heard this on August 13th, and present were myself, let's see if we have Mr. Alessi, Commissioner Jacobson, Commissioner Kennelly, Commissioner Suitors, 5, Commissioner Calabrese, and Commissioner Parker. So we have 7 here that heard it. So unlike the other, nobody said they wanted to be on this, so we can take this up if we choose. So maybe we'll run through that one
Okay.
then?
I can give you a brief overview of what was presented at the public hearing. The current proposal involves subdivision construction with a new subdivision road from Tuller Road and 7 building lots. The 7 lots are proposed to be at least 2,000 square feet in size, which is required by the zone, and the proposed lot 3 comprises of approximately 69,000 square feet. An existing residence is proposed to be demolished for the new road. The property total is approximately 5.1 acres. The applicant is offering a conservation easement as part of the drainage plan, which was extensively discussed at the public hearing. The subdivision's construction will include construction of 7 new homes, driveways, and sanitary sewer lines. Site disturbance also includes construction of stormwater detention basin, an area of wetland restoration, and new subdivision road for Tuller Road, from Tuller Road, extending approximately 220 feet into the site with a 100-foot turnaround. An existing sanitary sewer line, the property through the northern portion of the property within a town easement, and a new sanitary sewer line is proposed in the east, in an easement that extends to Little Brook Road. All proposed lots would have driveways off of the proposed new road, proposed to be named Tuller School Road. No vehicle access is proposed for Little Brook Road, although the proposed sanitary line, as I mentioned, is planned to connect to the sanitary sewer pipe in Little Brook Road. To enhance the line of sight for the road access, sight line easements would be granted over certain properties which were identified at the public hearing and as part of the traffic report that was submitted to the commission. These easements would establish that no plantings in this area other than ground cover or flowers not to exceed 2 feet in height. The applicant proposes an offer of 52,263 square foot or 1.2 acre conservation easement in the northwest portion of the property, located on a portion of the proposed lots 2 and 3, which I mentioned before, which is in part of the proposed drainage system. To detain the increased stormwater runoff from the proposed new road and turnaround area, the applicant proposes to construct a stormwater detention basin on portions of lots 1, 2, and 3 with a new outlet control structure and discharge into wetlands. To direct the runoff from the road to the proposed basin, piping is proposed. Additionally, the applicant proposes to construct subsurface stormwater detention units on each individual lot to detain roof and driveway runoff. The drainage design proposes stormwater attenuation, groundwater recharge, and water quality improvements. Finally, an earthen berm and swale is proposed along the east end of lots 5 and 4 to direct surface runoff northerly to a silting basin to avoid any off-site runoff to adjacent properties. There was also a petition submitted as part of the application from residents, which I believe live on Tuller Road. And that, Mr. Chairman, was pretty much what was submitted at the public hearing. By the way, that petition was in favor of the application.
Okay. Before we discuss, do we have a motion? We need a motion to talk about. Thank you, Commissioner Parker.
Sorry.
Has moved it. Any second?
I'll second
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Alessi. Any discussion?
it. I'll go first.
You can go first, Mr. Alessi, sure.
I looked at this Tuller Road project many different ways, and I understand the desire by the neighbors on Tuller Road for this development so they could remove the old school that was there. It's an ugly, empty building, and I have to look at it every day, and I can understand that. I will tell you this, if it doesn't get passed tonight, I'm going to make a complaint of blight against this property, and I think the people on Tuller Road should do the same too. There's no reason why whoever owns this property cannot clean that building up and the property if this doesn't get approved tonight. As far as the neighbors on Marion and Littlebrook, it's a case of, I think this squeaky wheel gets the grease with the town, and I really think that you're going to have to stay on top of Public Works to clean the drains out on the bottom of Littlebrook there. I studied the plans, and I had an engineer in my office go over them, and he said Mr. Hammonds did a great job on the design and said it will work, but that in a couple of years there could be a problem. It has to be maintained. That led me to think about what Commissioner Kennelly said a couple of weeks ago about the human factor. Does this get cleaned out after a storm happens and after people get flooded out? 5 years from now, after a couple of homes may be sold, then what happens? Does a court battle ensue with the people who are living there now being sued by the people down the road because they keep on getting flooded out and this pipe doesn't get drained? Are they constantly trying to get a hold of town hall to get this cleaned out as well? And what happens when it becomes totally disregarded? I have great respect for Mr. Galante and his reports that we see. He does a great job. But I lived at this intersection for 14 years, and it's a nightmare. Right now, we have school children that spend almost an hour on the bus every day going down Fairfield Woods Road to go across town to go to school. I disagree with the 5 to 7 cars per hour at peak time. And let's also consider the school kid factor here. These homes that are going to have school kids, like mine, are going to see 3 to 4 trips in that peak hour every day per home. And in that neighborhood, cars are going to Jennings, Stratfield, Woods, and also in the area, Ward High School. Not to mention, we have people going to work, and not to mention, we also have kids that are walking to schools along this street as well. I feel this road, and specifically intersection of Tuller and Fairfield Woods, has way too much traffic and is backed up already. And the subdivision will only cause more of a safety issue. Based on what I see, what will be eventually flooding, and the neighborhood properties and neighboring properties and streets that already see overcrowding and traffic and flooding, I don't think this application is going to be, I can't see this application benefiting the neighbors in the surrounding areas. For these reasons, I'm going to be voting against this application.
Thank you. Mr. Alessi, any other else? Yes, Mr. Suter.
Yeah, we had a lot of talk about water, both pro and con on this application. And
Make sure it's on.
several of the neighbors are quite concerned about the future impact of water. One longtime resident said actually the property was originally a swamp. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but certainly it has a lot of water. However, as Mr. Alessi said, the engineer has done a good job of engineering the drainage. And the applicant's attorney specifically recommended that we impose as a condition of approval having a homeowners association which was responsible for paying for annual maintenance, whatever other maintenance is required on the drainage system. And that, it seems to me, together with the town DPW cleaning out the problem with the drainage off-site, should be sufficient to manage the water flow on the property. So I think the water issue has been well analyzed and dealt with, and I think we should include as a condition of approval that there be a homeowners association to maintain the property. I don't see the problems with the traffic. Mr. Galante made clear that the traffic coming out of this development will be very light, and even though there may be problems at the intersection of Tuller Road and Fairfield Woods, the additional cars produced by this property I don't think are sufficient to aggravate that in any meaningful way. So I think I don't think there is a traffic problem. So I'm going to vote in favor of this subdivision.
Anyone else wish to comment? Commissioner Jacobson or Commissioner Parker? You had it?
Sally?
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Parker.
I find that I can't support the application. I live in Stratfield and I drive on that road a lot. The traffic is terribly heavy. It is not just schools and people going to work. It's people on their way to the train station. It's people coming from Bridgeport to use the Fairfield train station. There's just too much traffic on the road to overburden it more from that particular intersection, and I will vote no.
Commissioner Jacobson.
I thought really hard about this application. I did visit the site 3 times. My sister used to live on Garden Drive off that road, and 20 years ago the traffic was horrendous. I never made a left. I used to go right and go around. I do recommend that the neighbors on Tuller Road, when I was on the RTM, we passed a blight ordinance, and that you need to contact your RTM members and get on the owners to get rid of that school, because it is horrible. It is a blight. I also recommend to the members that are below the development, get on the case of your RTM members. That's what they're for. Get them to clean out the drains, get them to call DPW and clean out the drains. But I thought long and hard, but I am not going to support this application. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll go if you want.
Go ahead, you go.
You know, I usually go last, but
I
if
don't
you
know.
guys want me
Okay.
to go
Okay.
first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we had a motion to approve, and as we go through, we'll make sure that we may want to amend it with the conditions in case, if we approve it. One would be the maintenance of the drainage system, and we need some good language around that, because that concerns me. Another one was talked about was a sightline easement.
Well, that's what I wanted to, you want to go
There, but in terms of the application, you know, I wish it were less lots. I wish it weren't 7, but 7 meets our current regulations for size, square, frontage. It'll meet the setback regulations. The square doesn't include any areas that are non-buildable. They were careful to do that. We denied their last application because they had the square over the stormwater recharge system, and they've corrected that with moving that. We have a town engineer that says that it meets the town's requirements, and there's no expert testimony that says the discharge to off-site post-development flows will be greater than the pre-development flows. So we have neighbors on Little Brook that are rightly concerned with water, that have current issues, but there is no evidence on the record that this development will make it any worse for them. So I personally cannot use that as a reason to deny. With regard to traffic, I too live in Stratfield, like Commissioner. It doesn't matter where we live. We all drive all over town, and we're all residents of town, and we represent the entire town. But I too live in Stratfield, and I go nuts on that street, because I get stuck in traffic all the time on Fairfield Woods at all hours of the day. So traffic is bad. The problem with that is, and Mr. Alessi may be right, they may have underestimated some of it, but the bar, as I understand it, for subdivisions is not how bad traffic is, because we're really not to consider off-site traffic or the availability of schools or municipal services. If those were valid reasons for denials, I doubt we would approve many subdivisions at all. The thing is that the traffic report shows like a less than a second increase in delay. And it depends on whether you believe that. It's like 40 seconds to 40.4 or something. So I don't know that from the evidence there's an appreciable. Is there traffic there? Is it horrible? Yes, and I will attest to that. The question isn't that. I wish it were, but it's not. To me, the question is, will this development cause more traffic, and will it be safe ingress and egress? You know, Mr. Galante does these elaborate traffic reports that he's, you know, engaged to do, and he does a good job with them. But the key, to me, as I understand the criteria in subdivisions, is not what the off-site conditions are, but the impact of this development on those conditions, which is analyzed, and the proper safe ingress and egress. Sightlines are a huge issue for us, because, you know, we may not be able to control much, but they've got to be able to get in and out safely. So I'm concerned about the maintenance there for the sightlines, and if we were going to approve this, I'd want to see some condition for that.
Because you
Okay,
break.
I'm done.
Yeah, thanks. That was excellent. I actually waited because I wanted to kind of hear your breakdown. Because I really did struggle with this, and just in brief,
What we had initially, of course, was before us, the original application we saw before this one, the one that was first brought, would have basically cut through. This is now a closed circle. I think that it's important for anybody who's trying to understand how we decide on this, that I get as frustrated as Mr. Alessi, and I've expressed it to Mr. Galante, and I'm kidded with him about how roads get heavy, but the chairman is correct that off-site traffic, at the end of the day, isn't really what we're doing when we're dealing, unless it's a huge development that really will have some staggering impact there. But we have to look at really what is on the site. So my concern is actually in line with something that was raised by Commissioner Alessi regarding the drains. I'm not convinced that the drains, for example, aren't going to be vacuumed, and it seems like the homeowner association issue could be could address that. That there would be assessments, and then that would be dealt with. But I am very concerned about the sight lines that are only created through these agreed to easements. And I will tell you that in my neighborhood, for example, there are fence heights because of subdivisions right in my neighborhood where if someone were to come along and not care, they could put up a higher fence that would really cause problems for folks who are backing out of driveways. And one issue that we do have to consider very carefully in our administrative capacity when we do this, and administrative capacity is very narrow, is how safe is the creation of this new subdivision, and in terms of the in and out of getting in there. Not how much traffic, because let's face it, 7 houses isn't going to put 1,000 cars on the road. So I do have concerns as presented that relying on these agreements with the nearby neighbors, who knows, when neighbors change hands, they say, that these will be maintained, the easements run. But all you need is someone to let bushes run out of control, put up a fence, and now those sight lines, which, you're coming down off a hill, this new road created is now going to interact with that. I do have some concerns about this, and I would like to see something stronger. If we make it as a conditional of approval that, everybody should promise not to cut their bushes, I hope they won't, or don't put up a fence. I have concerns about those sight line issues. It has to be, as administrator, and saying yes to or no to this, I have to say, am I completely sure that 10 years from now when I'm living with this, I'm living with sight lines that are essentially the same, and that may not be the case, and I think that is at least something reasonable to hang your hat on. Finally, the thing I would say is I do echo my fellow commissioners' concerns about this cycle we see where you have a property that is acquired with the intent of development, and the property begins to decline. Some previous use is abandoned or has been abandoned before, and over time, security isn't provided, lighting isn't provided, and the neighborhood around it becomes more and more and more receptive to anything as a development. I won't bring the name up, but we have developed something right in our neighborhood. People are now, would like to see change in terms of any kind of development. But Jerry and I live near each other for a long time. The point is this: I think on a very narrow case here. I see this as, for the applicant, this is closer. They're no longer looking for a number of units that would have, if it had gone the other way in terms of egress, would have been a real problem with what we allow inside what we view as a cul-de-sac. It is small. There are fewer houses, but I'm not sold that long-term the interaction of where this new subdivision is created for sightline is safe enough. It just isn't safe enough in my view, just to say, well, I hope that nobody ever lets their bushes grow. Because that's what's necessary here. That's what's dependent to get the sight lines necessary to make it work. And so I can't just throw those things away because on the block everyone's unhappy that the property owner who's acquired it to turn it around now isn't willing to kind of do a bit more to make sure kids aren't parking there or something else like that. It's their property. They're supposed to pay attention. The town has to pay attention. It isn't our job necessarily to look aside of any concerns we have about the actual subdivision and say, well, we got to get something in there. So I'm going to be, on a very narrow, very narrowly, I will vote against.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Calabrese.
This is a really tough case. I mean, I see both sides of the argument here. However, I see the traffic is definitely going to be an issue. I drive that road every day as well. But based on everything I've read, regulations, all that, I would agree with our chairman, and I don't see how you could not approve this. So I would be voting for this.
Thank you. We've discussed it a little bit. I just want to make sure that, I don't know who moved the application? Okay, well, I need you to, no, help me out. We need the conditions that yeah, I know the motion was approved, but if we approve it, we need, the conditions are, that somehow, how should we word the condition on the maintenance of the drainage system requiring the homeowners association?
Yeah, the homeowner association, actually, that's, is this on? Yeah. That was a condition of approval of the wetland permit.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be, you would basically, not redundant, but you would, I would recommend that your condition of approval be consistent with what the Conservation Commission is requiring. And then very simply, it is the same thing, that there be a maintenance agreement and that there be it be maintained by a homeowners association. It's specific, and if you, I think copies of that was handed out to the commission.
Yeah.
It's relatively specifically outlined in there what that process is all about. The only other comment I'll make about the other condition you have, the line of sight, if you remember at the hearing, the applicant did submit copies of the easement agreements. Yes, trees will grow, but just so you understand, if the property owners sign off on those easements, they're liable. So God forbid if someday, 10 years from now, something grows in that easement, in that area that isn't consistent with what the easement outlines, and there's an accident, that person's liable. That's my understanding with easements throughout the town. So there is some enforcement of that aspect of it. And if you remember, I think in at least the two that were submitted, it identified the areas where the easement would exist. A good portion of that is in the town right away. So of course the town would have some liability with that also.
I guess the concern I have is that we didn't get executed sightline easement agreements. We got blank.
I think the explanation of the applicant's attorney at that point is the property owners, of course, would not sign off on it until there was an action on the subdivision. So your condition of approval would require that, sir. Right?
Our condition of approval, we require that we receive fully executed sightline agreements with all neighbors. Because I look, and maybe I didn't ask. Three properties, right. Maybe I didn't line them up, but it looks like they're going through the Peter and Erica Angelopoulos property, and the sightline goes right through a 24-foot maple, 24-inch maple, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know if that actually is part of the line of sight issue because of its height, but that could be found out.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, it's going right through the tree, so I didn't ask that at the hearing, I can't ask it now, but,
I would strongly recommend that be a condition of your approval, if you're going to approve.
right,
That you secure those prior to things being signed off.
yeah. Anything else we want to add as conditions? Would you be in favor of amending your motion with those conditions? That doesn't mean you have to support the application. Okay. Anything else that we're missing? Anybody? Scott? No? Okay. The motion was made and seconded to approve the subdivision application. And we've discussed it. It's subject to a couple conditions, as well as our standard subdivision conditions about bonding and everything like that. So the motion was made to approve, so a vote in favor, when I say aye, that means you vote to approve it. If you say nay, that means you vote to deny it. Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of the, I lost my agenda, of this thing, thank you, Mr. Suter, thank you, of the 144 Tuller Road subdivision application of Christopher Coco, Nal Garzada, Piekarski, and Jack and Mary Lou Casper for 7 lots in an R3 zone. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That's Mr. Suter, Mr. Calabrese, and myself. And those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay is Commissioner Parker, Commissioner Alessi, Commissioner Kennelly and Commissioner Jacobson. The application is not approved, therefore it is denied. Okay. Just give me a second to get back. I started shuffling papers and I seem to have lost my agenda. Thank you. No, Mr. Suter's got me covered. Thank you. Okay. Next, we move to compliances. 2226 Blackrock Turnpike, application of ABC Signcorp for an overall sign plan in a design commercial district. I'm sorry. Staff will brief us on this. We can all take a little moment and reorganize our papers, which is a good idea. That's a good idea.
Okay. This property is called Clearview Holdings. You may recall it is the former Fairfield Pool property on Blackrock Turnpike where the second floor is removed. It's undergoing renovation. I do have what was not included in your packet, which I do have that I will give to this end of the table, and you can pass them down, is the location of where the ground sign is being proposed. You have in your packet the overall sign plan for channel letters for the tenants within this renovated building. They're also proposing a ground sign to replace the ground sign that was there before. Because of the driveway for the bank drive-through, it's being relocated. It will be 5 feet from the actual property line, but 23 feet from the actual curb line. Our regulations require 25 feet from the property line. The existing, or I should say the former sign was 7.5 feet from the property line. Because of the driveway configuration, they're proposing 5 feet, but as I said, the leading edge of that sign is 23 feet from the edge of the pavement. So you would need to find in favor of allowing a less than 25-foot setback for the ground sign. But other than that, it's a unified design for channel letter style signs on the building.
Okay, so we have 226 Blackrock Turnpike. This is the overall sign plan. Everybody has it in front of them, including the handout that Mr. Wendt gave us. Do we have a motion on this sign plan?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve simultaneously, I'll say Mr. Kennelly, and second by Commissioner Jacobson. That's okay. Just make sure we get the, moving along. Okay, any discussion of this sign plan?
I think it's a good sign. It follows all the regulations, right, in terms of lighting and
Yes.
spacing and... I think it's a good sign. It's, if I remember, this was a really good application. That's going to improve the site, and I think the sign is appropriate, the lighting's appropriate, the size is appropriate, and I'll support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. Anyone else? Mr. Suter?
It's actually, I think it's technically a pole sign because it's more than 6 feet high. Right. Actually, it's almost 12 feet high. And it's a very nice design, and
It's too close, though, isn't it?
I was very pleased to see that the street number was at the top of the sign in large numerals, unlike some other applications we've had.
It's too close, though.
So
It's supposed to
that's
be 25
very
foot.
positive, and it's almost sort of grandfathered in the sense that it's replacing an existing sign, so I think we could accept the 23 feet setback instead of 25.
Thank you, Commissioner Suter. Anyone else? No, I recall this was an excellent application. This was one where they actually shaved the story off the building as opposed to tacking one on, improving the track, made it smaller, more attractive, all those things. Well, they don't really matter, but I remember very positive things about this application. And the sign plan was, Mr. Jacobs couldn't be with us tonight, but I think even he'd like this one. I can't speak for him, but he's usually the one focused on signs. I don't pretend to speak for Mr. Jacobs, no. But I'll just say I will support this sign plan as well. Anyone else wish to comment on this application? Okay, are we ready to vote then? Okay. All in favor of 2226 Blackrock Turnpike application of ABC Signcorp for an overall sign plan, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No one is opposed, and the application is approved. Last item on our executive session agenda is 222 Post Road, application of Connecticut Wellness Centers LLC to establish a medical marijuana dispensary in a portion of an existing building in a design commercial district. Mr. Wendt or Mr. Devanchik?
Yeah, let me give you a brief overview of why this application is here. Initially, well, simply, an act concerning the public use of marijuana became effective in the state of Connecticut on May 31st, 2012, under PA Act, Public Act 1255. Final regulations to be administered by the Department of Consumer Protection were approved as of today. I think the commission, I think we sent you an email, copy of that notice, and also I think we sent you a section of the proposed at that time regulations that are subject to Town Plan Zoning Commission's review and concern. So about this application specifically, the applicant seeks permission to open a medical marijuana dispensary at 222 Post Road in Fairfield. The property is located in the design commercial district zone where retail pharmacies are permitted use, subject to receiving an approved zoning compliance. The applicant will lease one of one of the buildings on this site. The area to be leased would be consisting of 1,600 square feet. It's consistent with the regulations that were approved today. Only patients properly registered with the Department of Consumer Protection would have prescriptions for medical marijuana from properly registered physicians would be permitted to enter the building and purchase the product. Other businesses on the site include several restaurants, a message center, a car rental business, a laundromat, hair salon, and a dry cleaner. It's essentially a multi-retail plaza. Medical marijuana dispensaries are controlled, as I mentioned before, by the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection. In order to operate the dispensary, the owner must first obtain a local zoning approval from the town or city where the dispensary is located. That's why this application is in front of you tonight. Once the local zoning approval is received, the Department of Consumer Protection is ready to accept applications, operators, and when they're ready to accept applications, and I think in that information we sent you today that they're anticipating sometime in September, I believe, to review whatever applications come to them, which again would require local zoning board approvals prior. That frankly is part of the portion of the application to the Department of Consumer Protection that would complete their application for their certificate. And again, it is ready to accept, operators will apply to the department to be licensed as a dispensary. The floor area for the dispensary must be approved by the department, and also I think we received copies of what they're proposing as part of our application. And any subsequent changes to plans must also be approved. The design and operation of the dispensary must provide adequate security to prevent the diversion of any product to unpermitted users. Dispensaries must be open as part of the law, regulations for a minimum of 35 hours per week. No marijuana may be consumed at the location. As far as other issues that the Planning and Zoning Commission should be interested in, signage and advertising is also strictly controlled by the department regulations. It is expected that these dispensaries will only have a small sign on the building identified as the Connecticut Wellness Center LLC and containing the street address. That, of course, would be something this commission would also review and act upon. No products other than those permitted by the medical marijuana products by the department that may be sold in dispensaries. So again, this is in front of you as a form of a zoning compliance based on an act that was passed in May 2012. And again, the regulations that the department will use were passed as of today, which you have copies of. So that essentially is what an outline of what the compliance application is in front of you right now. Based on our regulations, your process, your options here are to approve, deny, approve with conditions, or set to public hearing. That are your options tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Devanchik. Now, I usually don't make motions, but I'll just want to comment before we make a motion, just to make sure what we're considering. It's on our docket as a compliance application. But a compliance application under section 12.2, did I get that right? Needs to, anything where they're not doing new construction, reconstruction, or interior alteration, still is subject to the standards of 25.7, which we still have to read. So we have to evaluate all those requirements of approval, that it's a permitted use, whether this is truly retail or not. any other plans, whether it's traffic, harmonizing, all those other things, need to be approved. I understand it's in a shopping center already. I would, regardless of dates and times or anything like that, I would like to send this to a public hearing and have somebody explain this to us. I don't feel comfortable approving it or denying it around a table, around a law or some regs that were passed today.
Right, I totally agree with that.
So that's my view. I can't make the motion, but I just wanted to make sure we realize that it's not just, it's compliance, it's still subject to our favorite section. You go ahead, Mr. Suter.
I was going to say that the whole subject matter we're dealing with is in a legal landscape which is subject to change, and the Attorney General indicated that in his opinion. He says, as of now, it was his opinion that Connecticut's regulations were not in violation of any federal legal scheme. But this is an ongoing legal field, and there may be future changes, and I think we should not rush to judgment on this. So I think a public hearing is a very good process.
Yes, Commissioner Kennelly, then Commissioner Jacobson.
I'll just say I'm fully in agreement. I think that's very wise.
Commissioner Jacobson?
I disagree. I would not send it to a public hearing. It is a compliance, it meets the law of Connecticut, and I think that we should vote on it as a compliance.
We need to have we probably should have a motion, but that's okay. Yeah, Mr. Alessi and Mr. Paul.
I have to tell you, other than this map and this map, I have nothing else to go on this application, on this project. So there's no way that I could vote on bringing medical marijuana to Fairfield based on these two pictures. And I would love to see this thing to go to a public hearing.
Yes, Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, that's the problem I'm having. I find it an incomplete application, and the inability to ask some questions, I find very difficult. I couldn't approve it.
Right, go ahead, Commissioner Calabrese. Yeah, I have no idea if there's going to be a couple of these in the state, what traffic it might generate, here's the thing,
quickly,
all those questions.
look, you're still, the simplest thing is, if you're going to judge it on that standard, 25.7, you're going to have to deal with the question of harmony. Is it a match for, you can't, is it going to work, and all those tests have to be considered. Look, I certainly think, I don't know, in this situation, can we request, because I think we have.
Oh, yeah, we've moved public compliances to public hearings before, lots of times. I think we did one this year, but I can't remember which one it was.
So with that in mind, let's just move things along. I'll make a motion that we do move this to a public we do move this for a date certain for a public hearing.
Motion to move to public hearing by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Alessi. Any further discussion? Are we ready to vote? The motion is made and seconded to move to public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Commissioner Jacobson is opposed. The other 6 people here are voted to move to public hearing, and it'll get scheduled. That's it for our executive session. We'll just take a few minutes, not too many since we're running late, to reconfigure for the public hearing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Mr. Randall,
I'm sorry.
Parker does have a question. I believe it's a clarification question.
It's a clarification. You implied early in what you were saying that there are 3 houses involved. My understanding from the plans that I'm looking at is that the subdivision is to produce 2 houses.
You're absolutely correct. The current subdivision is. If you go back 1 year to when Mr. Tobacco opened the property, it essentially included what they've already cut away for free, my understanding. So if he had to do the whole plan, there would be 3 subdivisions, but you don't see it because it was a free cut. So it went, like I said, from one small house to 3 houses on the same square, though this is a lesser part of the original square from a year ago. I have a concern. I know he said he didn't need to produce a grading plan because the grade here isn't extreme. We've had some talks offhand with a developer or two that indicate that we should in fact see a grading plan, and that this property that's closest to my house may require a retaining wall to be built. There is a pretty heavy slope here. There's a picture, I think you can see, it's actually the property they're building that was on the free cut that shows the extreme slope at the back end of the property, and it's not much less. It does increase as it goes further down the hill, but it's not unsloped property. It's on the back page. Yeah. So that is the property where it actually has a walkout basement because the slope was sufficient to allow for it. I know we talked to the engineer because a lot of people had the water issues, and she did in fact put those Caltex in there, and she was concerned that if the houses get bigger, that would need to be tracked and make sure they come up bigger. A number of neighbors were concerned about the amount of trees that were removed from the property. I understand the tree warden has gone in and said there's essentially no trees that need to be removed. That's because most of them were cut down already. And then there's, of course, lighting across the street and nearby that people have concerns about. So I don't have anything else to bring up at this moment. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Like other people might want to.
Any questions for Mr. Randolph? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Randolph. Any other members of the public wish to be heard? Other members of the public? This is your opportunity.
Hi, my name is Cindy Johnston. I live at 910 North Benson, so we are 2 houses away from 960, and we've lived there. We moved in 2001, so about 12 years. And I just want to say that I fully support everything that Ted Randolph has said. We're in complete agreement with him. And, you know, we moved into this neighborhood because of the character, because it was an open neighborhood that had houses that were, you know, similar kind of look and feel and character. And, you know, we'd like to maintain that same look and feel. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any other members of the public wish to be heard?
My name is Ken Doherty. I'm at 888 North Benson Road, which is 3 houses down from the proposed subdivision. We are also in agreement with the other public members here. We are not in agreement with the subdivision. It's not in good fit with the character of the neighborhood, and we are in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Good evening. My name is Dan Venner. I live at 255 Wormwood, so I'm the backyard neighbor to the proposed subdivision, and I agree with the statements Mr. Randolph made, and I've got concern about the drainage. I hadn't seen the updated plans, but I have significant concerns about the drainage coming down the hill and flooding out my property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to be heard on this matter? No? If there is no member of the public, we just go back to the applicant. The applicant gets the last word. That's our rule. So Mr. Rizzo can offer rebuttal or just close, whatever he wants to do.
I hope to be pretty quick. Chairman, once again, although there are, I understand, in a special permit process, character, off-site traffic, school, all sorts of impacts may be considered. As we know, this is a simple subdivision application where once we meet our, I don't need to tell you responsibilities, you know them, I certainly heard about them all in the last hearing. But I don't think there was anything put forth by the opposition which would give rise to a denial of an application. With regard to the grading plan, if you see the grades are very significant on lot directly to the east. But if you can see, these are basically 2-foot contours. This lot is, believe it or not, very flat. There'll be no walkout basement, no need for it. And and that's by an A2 survey. So granted, the lot further to the south, which was a subject of a free cut, has much more significant grading. We don't have the issues with the grading that we see on the proposed 2-lot subdivision. With regard to character, like I said, with regard to size of the lots exceed the minimum by 20%. That the character of a lot in an A zone is 9,375 square feet. The fact that some may be oversized is irrelevant. The fact that we meet and exceed it by 20%, I believe, is very relevant. This is also what's important to note is you do have some leverage where you see these, and that's usually solved by your square requirement, that there's no irregular shape to these lots. These are standard rectangular lots. They satisfy the square, they satisfy the frontage, so there's nothing unique about these lots except that they satisfy your standards 100%. With regard to the traffic, we'll be adding one driveway onto North Benson Road. I usually steal Mr. Galante's traffic presentation, and I would think probably in this instance it's safe to assume that one driveway onto North Benson Road clearly will not change the level of service on North Benson Road. And on top of that, I think we were here before you on 1550 North Benson Road less than a year ago, where we took a driveway away from North Benson Road and put it up on and put the houses on facing Nutmeg. I don't see any change to the level of service. I don't see any traffic impact by this. We greatly exceed the sight lines in some instances by 200 and 300 feet. As relates to a subdivision application, this is about as conforming as it gets. When you then take into account that we request that this commission add as conditions the requirements and requests of the town engineer, I believe you have done all that you can to preserve the interests of the town, protect the health and safety and welfare of the residents, and allow no negative impact on any adjoining properties. For all those reasons, I respectfully request this commission grant this application, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Before we close, because this is live, does anybody have anything else for Mr. Rizzio? I want to clarify one point that you just said, Mr. Rizzio. Just want to make sure I understand this correctly. There is no grading plan because the current grading is the plan.
That's correct. We do. I shouldn't say. I apologize.
Right.
I should have said it myself, Chairman. The grading plan is as shown.
Right.
Which is shown on the survey, because we are not going to be changing the grading to the lot.
There is no grading plan because there's no work to be done to
Correct.
change the grade.
Right.
It is existing grade.
Existing grade
You are
is
building on existing grades.
And that is our grading plan.
And with the construction of 2 houses, that's not going to change that grade?
No.
Okay. I understand. A grading plan is required, and I understand.
We have, yeah. It's
You have a grading plan. It's
as
just
exists.
unchanged.
As exists.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
That's a good point.
Anything else from the commission? Not, I will close the hearing.
Thank you very much.
Like one, I would jump right up here. I just wanted to jump right up and say, some days you just can't be people zero. I just don't see that's a killer. That one is. I don't like what you're doing there on the hill, but because that's what's going on. Around that side of the university, they're jamming them in one after another. What are you going to lose in
my agenda? To disappear, I do. I'm not managing papers.
You know, I'm always scared to even ask, but there's this theoretical concept of the right to return, where anyone can appeal something, and then you have to have the right of return of all documents.
Yeah.
So I've been keeping my stuff through decisions. I don't have a warehouse somewhere for 6 years. That's what I'm saying. Like, I have tons of notations, but once it's been decided, and I've heard there's this concept right of return.
Yeah, well, Dolores does that. She likes
Yeah, but they're white.
Right, but I'm just, well, yeah, but it makes me very nervous.
Don't get appealed.
No, of course.
I keep the denials.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You'll see, Anthony. This paper looks good. At the start, I go, oh, good, I'm going to save all this stuff.
Yeah.
Recycle. But yeah, if we ever deny anything that's got these lines
Really,
stuck,
right,
it's good to save it so that Dolores.
Well, yeah, man.
So they have to return a record every document that they got. They need to make copies. We ready to go? Okay.
I'm not kidding. It's funny. I'm in a cool room.
Yeah, great. Very cool.
Nice, very creative. A micro traffic study. Grading the driveways impact for site plans. Gosh, this is like the fourth time this has been here.
Yeah, you know that technically, they don't have to provide.
No, I know.
Unless we ask them to, but they do have to provide evidence of adequate site.
Sidelines, right, but
Even that one right here, you don't have to hire an engineer, except there's rules for how many, but you can require it.
I think it's just going to get multiple now. Like, there's no point. The people that are going to oppose this, they're not really getting it. They're going to keep prepared. Yeah, like, they just need to get the processes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is 50 Chatham Road, re-subdivision application of 50 Development LLC for 3 lots in an R2 zone. Mr. Walsh.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is James F. Walsh, a partner in the law firm of Miller, Garland, and Walsh, located here in Fairfield. I'm also a Fairfield resident. I'm representing here tonight 50 Development LLC. And just so that we're clear, the members of 50 Development LLC are Arnold M. Karp, who is here today, and Cider Mill LLC, whose member is Jay Borkowski, and Mr. Borkowski could not make it here tonight. I'm just going to hand over just the list of the members, just so that you have it for the record.
Great.
As most of you know, this is my client's third application for 3-lot subdivision of this property at 50 Chatham Road. 50 Development LLC is the owner of real estate located on Chatham Road within the town of Fairfield and designated as Assessor's Map number 28 as parcels 279, 280, 281, and 282, all known as 50 Chatham Road. This property is also known as lots 47, 48, and 49, as shown on a map by the name of Maps for Thomas E. Peterson, dated December 15th, 1948, made by Andrew S. Huntington, and on file in the town clerk's office is map 1631. This said subdivision map was marked approved and signed by the chairman of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission of the town of Fairfield on June 20th, 1950. This property is located in a Residence R2 zone, as defined by your regulations. And just to give you a slight history of this matter and the times we've come before you, so we can just get a handle of where we were and where we are. My client first submitted a re-subdivision application on April 5th, 2012 for a re-subdivision of the 3 lots. Public hearings were held on that application on June 26, 2012, July 10, 2012, July 24, 2012, and August 14, 2012. On August 14, 2012, this commission voted to deny my client's application, and in doing so, set forth 3 reasons for that denial. The first was that pursuant to section 1.1.15 of the subdivision regulations, the applicant had not demonstrated that the property to be subdivided is of such a character that it can be used for 3 building lots as proposed without danger to health or public safety, and the adequate sight lines had not been provided for in individual driveways according to the applicant's own traffic report and the town engineer. The second reason was that pursuant to section 1.1.15, it had not been demonstrated that adequate provisions for drainage had been made so as not to cause off-site impacts, both in terms of storm drainage design and the potential impacts of groundwater change due to rock excavation. And the third was that the installation of the detention systems over which the residence cannot be built
within the lot square violates the lot area and shape requirements of section 31.2.21 of the zoning regulations. The applicant went to work on correcting some of what this commission perceived were violations, although the applicant still did not believe they were violations and has a current appeal outstanding on that. And prepared another application and made some modifications to address some of this commission's concerns in a way of trying to work with this commission on trying to get their re-subdivision application through. Most notably, they put the detention system outside your square, which is an 80-foot square. So that took care of that issue. We changed sight lines to try to take care of that issue. We had test borings done on the property to show that we would need no blasting, and we're willing to make that a condition of our application, and supplied further information in regards to the drainage. And in November 2012, filed that new application with the new plans, and at a public hearing that was held on May 14th, we came and presented our application. On May 28th, 2013, this commission voted once again to deny my client's application. And on May 31st, 2013, this commission issued a written decision in this matter. I'm going to read you a part of that decision. I can read the whole thing if you'd like, or I can show you actually the letter if you want to see it. I don't know if it's part of your record, but I can hand it out. But
It should be part of the record. I mean, I remember it, but not everybody does. So.
Yeah, but basically the only concern at that point was one point. We had gotten rid of all the other objections that this commission had. And at that point, it stated that pursuant to section 1.1.15 of the subdivision regulations, the defendant had not demonstrated that the property to be subdivided is of such a character that it can be used for 3 building lots as proposed without danger to health or public safety, and that adequate sight lines have not been provided for individual driveways. And it gets into a little bit more, but basically your issue was sight lines. That's what it was limited to. It appeared that the commission had some confusion or questions in regards to our traffic access and impact study and the analysis that went into it. We decided that we would try once again to alter our re-subdivision plan slightly and have another traffic access and impact study prepared, which one you have before you tonight is dated August 2013. We are here tonight to explain to the commission how the current plan meets all the requirements of your subdivision regulations, and thus this re-subdivision application must be approved. As you know, you have certain standard of review. The lots as proposed tonight comply with all the technical requirements of both the zoning and the subdivision regulations of the town of Fairfield, and therefore the commission must approve the re-subdivision application. In exercising your function of approving or disapproving a re-subdivision plan, a planning commission acts in its administrative capacity, which you're acting in this evening. The commission is limited to determining whether or not the re-subdivision application complies with the subdivision regulations. Case law R.B. Kent & Son versus Planning Commission of the Town of Ledyard. You cannot consider off-site traffic conditions, municipal service required, and the effect of the approval on property values in the area. General policy statements in your regulations are also not valid for rejecting a subdivision. Where a subdivision meets the existing regulations of a planning commission, the commission must approve the application. Now, I have these plans that are before you, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because one of the pages was changed, and I believe Mr. Wendt got the 4th page there was a slight revision.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. First of all, the first page, it shows the required square thing, and it shows...
Re-subdivision map?
Yes.
Okay.
So that didn't change at all.
Okay.
So we should all be on the same page there. But it does show that each of the lots meets the requirement of having at least a 14,000 square foot lot. The next page is basically called the data accumulation plan for the 3-lot subdivision. Then there's a supplemental site plan depicting off-site topography. And the next page was a sight line map. Now, the first sight line map, which in the revision section over here has no information, was incorrect on one of the numbers. So we submitted another page.
Another site line.
Another one's called Sightline Map, which has a revision date of August 20th, 2010, which is right there.
August 20th or August 2nd?
August 20th.
The right one.
One date.
It was not stapled to the other. It was separate.
There's two of them underneath. They're trying to grab the wrong.
Oh, yeah, we got the separate site. Yep.
Oh, this is, okay, yeah.
Yep, we've got the one.
Okay, that's the one that should, in regards to the sightline map, that's the one that should be used.
Okay.
Okay? So I just wanted to just clear up that confusion. We're all on the same page? Great.
As far as the document.
Yep, thanks.
Mr. Washington, just one thing. And
Sure.
Again, I know it's been difficult, I don't mean to be difficult. I recall this application very well from its 2 previous iterations. You know, we have, and a new commissioner that wasn't
Yes.
here. We have other commissioners, I cannot recall who was at the first one, who was at the second one.
Sure.
So I understand, we want to do this, we need to do this in a somewhat abbreviated fashion, you don't have to go with the same full explanation, but at least your application does need to be a full record, you need to at least cover the main points of why.
And I plan to do, I plan to do that only because I realized that just in case we were unsuccessful, I need to build myself an appeal. So I need to have a full record too.
Right, yeah,
So-
I mean, you know, I'm not throwing, you know, but he can't approve it just because we come in and say, well, you know, the issues last time were addressed.
Yes.
He needs to include.
Yes.
You know, whatever the plans, the drainage.
That's fine.
Everything you would normally.
We
present.
are. I'm going to try to
Maybe in a
present it,
abbreviated fashion, but-
I'm going to try not to have it go on ad nauseum, but I think that each of the commissioners, whether they be new or whether they weren't sitting, has a full right to hear
Yeah.
about our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Here with me tonight, as I mentioned earlier, is Arnold Karp, who's a member of 50 Development LLC. He's here to accept any questions. I also have Mike Galante from Frederick P. Clark Associates, Inc., who is our traffic expert, as you know. And we also have Mike B. Turler, professional engineer, who did all the engineering with the Hunting Company. To start with, I think what I'm going to have to do is we're going to start with Mr. Buturla. I think it's a good idea to start with him so we can get some of the drainage and the square issue, just to identify that, quickly go through that, just to hear it. And then I think we're going to have a more fuller presentation by Mr. Galante regarding the sightline issue, which seemed to be the major sticking point, at least of the last hearing. But we will accept any and all questions regarding this complete application. At any point in time, we'll take them, or at the end. So however, Mr. Vice Chairman, however you want to handle it. Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Buturla to come up. Mike, if you could kind of quickly go through the square issue and show how the detention system that we have and explain the water detention system we have.
Okay. Members of the commission, my name is Michael Buturla. I'm a licensed land surveyor, licensed professional engineer here in Connecticut, also a member of the Huntington Company with our office here in Fairfield. The site plan before you is very similar to the one that was at the last public hearing. What we did to the change is in the middle lot, lot number 2. We took the house that sat way to the, 20 feet further to the east, almost at the building setback line, side setback line, and shifted to the left, to the west. We moved it to the west about 22, 23 feet. Still stays in the within the building setback lines. So picture-wise, that's the change from the public hearing that preceded this one. All the lots are serviced by public sewer, public water. On the property to our extreme west, the left side of your map, There's an existing catch basin that feeds into the storm water system. There's a smaller 8-inch pipe. When this plan last time went before the town engineer, Laura Pooley suggested that we improve the pipe, and which we did. We're proposing to turn that 8-inch, take that 8-inch pipe, drain pipe out, and putting a 15-inch pipe in. Besides that, we're going to run up a 15-inch stormwater pipe all the way up our property and add 2 additional catch basins to catch the water prior to it all going down and puddling down the bottom of the hill. All our proposed impervious areas, our proposed houses, proposed driveways, everything will lead into a stormwater detention system. Each house will have its own stormwater detention system that will flow out into the proposed stormwater pipe in the street. I analyzed the stormwater system from storms 2 to 100 years, and there'll be no increase in stormwater runoff. My calculations, my drainage report was reviewed by Laura Pooley, and I think last time in her comments, she wrote to you that she was satisfied with the drainage. Also on the lots, on the required building square, I took all the proposed stormwater systems out of the square. We pointed that out to you last time also. Also, at each proposed house site, we had a backhoe digging test holes, and we dug down at least 2 feet below the basement floor to show that we can put a footing in with no blasting. So we've got test holes and results on the plan that shows that we dug the test holes. And again, I think the main point was that there'll be no increase in stormwater runoff, and that was backed up by your engineering department.
Any questions?
Answer a couple of
Yes,
questions.
you have questions, Mr. Commissioner Parker, and then you have some questions for him too?
On the drain that runs from Random Road out to Pond Street, that's being enlarged by the town, is it?
I think last time, or even the time before, there was correspondence from engineering department that said it was on their schedule, but there was no timetable for it. They didn't commit to a time.
Ms. Parker, just to answer that question a little further, there is plans to do it, but they are not going to, Public Works and Engineering are not going to do the work until that road is being replaced down there. But then, once it's being replaced, they're planning on making those changes. Yes. Mr. Petrola, so let me just ask you a couple of questions. So the flow rates that are going to be post-development are going to be less than they are pre-development,
That's
correct?
correct. There's no increase in stormwater runoff.
Okay, and one of the reasons are we have these storm detention basins?
Each lot has a stormwater system consisting of a plastic pipe. The water will go in and go out at a metered rate at a slower rate.
Okay, and that's on each of the lots, and that's what Ms. Pulley examined,
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
Okay, and all of the water that's going to be touching the roofs or any of the surfaces of the driveways are going to go into that system, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And it's your opinion, based on these test holes, because you witnessed them being done, that there's not going to be any blasting that needs
No,
to be done on the site?
we dug below the basement floor, in my opinion, below where the footings would be.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the drainage plan or any of the questions to address?
Is it possible on the most western house that their retention system runs from the front to the back of the property, since that's the lowest piece of property there?
Is there a possibility for what?
We run our retention system from the front of the property all the way along to the back of the property. All the way back, right to the back of the line, yeah.
Can we?
Yeah.
I didn't see the need for it. I mean, each system is basically the same. It's a rectangular, configuration of pipe.
No, I'm just saying that because that's the lowest piece of property coming down the hill. before it hits the existing house that's next door.
Keep in mind, these aren't stormwater, everybody refers.
No, I understand.
Refers to them
I'm talking, can we put a water retention system from the front of the property to the back of the property that'll catch any runoff water we see coming down that hill? Considering we got 2 more houses going in this area.
I think it already does, and I think if you go back to the correspondence from Laura Pooley, and perhaps some of the members could remember, her comments to me were to add a couple of catch basins. In this
Right.
particular lot, we added a catch basin, and we also added a berm, if you remember. So the water that comes from the lot goes to the berm, gets in this catch basin, the overland water. My opinion, I think Laura was diligent in asking for that request, and naturally we abided by, what she asked us to do.
And where do you have that catch basin coming into, retention system?
No, this one this bypasses the detention system.
Right through the pipe?
Simply because it's at a lower elevation.
Right.
To protect.
So you're tying that right into the street pipe, in other words?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the overland flow past the house will get into here and get into the system and not go across the property. And again, that was requested by Ms. Pulley.
That was a perforated pipe?
That particular pipe along this wall, yes, it's a perforated pipe. So besides just the catch basin catching the water that goes overland will hit the wall into that drain pipe and go north into the street drainage.
Because of the angle?
Well, because we've got stone, there's a drain.
Basically, we're putting a French drain.
That's exactly right, yes. It's going to catch the water, it'll either go in that catch basin or go into this under drain, the French drain, and then get into the piping system in the street, rather than flow overland to the west to the neighbors.
Any other questions for Mr. Petrola related to site, engineering, drainage, anything?
Mr. Vice Chairman, at this point, I'm going to ask that the exhibits and records of the last hearing be brought in and be made exhibits here, just because the drainage computations were in there and Ms. Pulley's comments in regards to, because the drainage system really didn't change at all. I mean, the only thing that really changed on this plan from the last time is what Mr. Butrelli did, is that we moved this house 22 feet more towards the west.
22 feet, okay.
To approximately between 22 and 23 feet to the west. I have the prior, if somebody wanted to see it, we have the prior plan to show you that, but there's a building line right here. We had built the house right on the corner of the building line, right inside the setback. And we moved it to make better sight lines, and also it aesthetically looked better because we weren't building we were centering the property on the lot. So aesthetically it worked as well to center the property right in the middle of that lot.
Okay, I would actually agree to what you requested, Mr. Warren. I actually saved copies of some of this, so I have one. I would just say that since we're making the engineering, the drainage reports, and Mrs. Pooley's comments part of the record, that we'll just make it available to any commissioner that doesn't still have them. We can stipulate they're part of the record, but I just want to make sure that anybody that wants to review them or has any questions about them now. You have them still? Yeah, so I can, okay. Some of us save these things, Mr. Walk, but, okay. So we'll make that part of the record.
Great, I really appreciate that, thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to bring up Mr. Galante to talk about his traffic report and specifically to address the concerns about sight lines, which we think we fully addressed in order to, hopefully to the Commission's satisfaction, to show that these driveways are safe, that we have safe sight lines, that we actually probably have we will have the safest driveways on this street. We actually have turnarounds that it was recommended that we have, So we put them in at the second application, and we continue them here. So people can back out and do a three-point turn and go out head first in their car. So, and I believe from driving up and down that street, we will be the only houses on that street that have them. I'm going to bring up Mr. Galante at this point in time to address that. While he's addressing that, I'm just going to pass out for your review, just because, can everybody just turn to, as I bring him up, that new single page, that revised page? We actually put the sight lines on the plan, the sight line map, from each lot, so you can see what they are. But as you can see, some of these lines are going all over the place, so it's kind of a little hard to figure it out. So what I had Mr. Buturla do today was to, and I'm going to pass them out in a little smaller form, they're 11 by 17, is take each lot one by one so you can see the sight line. So you're not trying to track with your finger that sight line. I also had him put in for each map, so you're not getting confused by east or westbound, what that sight line is and what the required sight line is supposed to be. And lastly, there's different slopes at different points as you go up Chatham Road, and for each sight line, you'll see what the slope is at that specific point. Mr. Galante is going to address that. So at this point in time, I'm just going to enter a full-size version of that with staff for the record, but I'm going to pass out to you 3 individual maps so that Mr. Galante can address lines for each lot. Be a lot easier for you.
Director Clark Associates, principal of the firm. We are located here in Fairfield, and I'm traffic study process. Oops, the road. We conducted traffic counts, and this data is from May of last year, 2012. And I know there was some concern about volumes getting old or speed data getting old. I can tell you that we do a lot of work in the state of Connecticut and other states, and data that's up to 3 years old is perfectly fine. I actually had the state of Connecticut approve something that was from 2007 recently in a different town. So this is 2012 data. It is certainly valid data. It's certainly good data for the purposes of this study. And on a road like Chatham Road, it's unlikely that it's changed in the last year. This graphic, which is figure 3 in my report, shows on an hourly time period the volume of traffic. The top line or the highest line is the two-way volume on Chatham Road itself. For reference purposes, just to give you an idea of the volume, 5 o'clock in the morning for a 1 hour period, 3 vehicles. From 6 to 7, 0 vehicles. This is in front of the site on Chatham Road. Between 7 and 8 a.m., 2 vehicles. 8 to 9, 4 vehicles, and so on. It actually peaked at 1 p.m. with 10 vehicles total for a 1 hour period.
it goes back down to 5, it goes back up between 3 and 4 o'clock, 13 vehicles, and back down to 10 vehicles between 4 and 5. As the evening goes on, it's 1 to 2 cars per hour. So I think it's safe to say it's a low-volume residential street from a traffic volume perspective. So this study is not really about traffic volumes, not about levels of service, it's not about delay. It's really about the site distances from the driveways, which you certainly, should have us address. And I think in my applications, in my studies, I probably gave you so much information that I confused everyone. So I'm going to try to touch on that tonight and try to simplify it. And I'll just touch on a couple things for the benefit of putting information as far as the traffic study in the record. And we talk about these things many times, but a 3-lot subdivision will generate about 3 cars per hour. And I know there's some disagreement with that. And I was thinking, actually, I know another subdivision that I actually counted near here, Bethel Woods Road area, that had 0.7 vehicles per unit during the peak hours. That's an actual count of a neighborhood. So when I say 1 car per unit during a 1-hour period, I do feel pretty comfortable with that number. It's based on the trips per unit for an entire neighborhood, in this case 3 homes. If I was to count Chatham Road on both ends, I could probably come up with 1 trip per unit on an hourly basis during the peak hours. So I do feel comfortable with that number. The numbers I'm using, the rates I'm using are from the ITE standards that we use, the town uses and accepts, and the state of Connecticut expects us to use. So I do feel comfortable with that. And I know there's some discussion, we all have 2 cars in our family, but this is a 1-hour period. I'm not saying there's another car in the next hour. I don't take it personal. However, my name was mentioned many times tonight.
Mr. Cohen, I make one, this is not even a question, it's just a comment to you. We appreciate the traffic report. I don't even know if the commissioners realize it. A traffic report is actually not even required unless we ask it, unless it's over 10 or more lots or, that type of thing. So there's a certain standard for when we require. We actually don't require, so the fact that you deliver a full traffic report. That being said, we do also require in our regulations that document, that adequate sightlines are provided, so.
Yes, I'm getting to that real quick.
That is the requirement, and both, obviously, we're all interested in traffic, but that's for me why.
So make it shorter?
Especially on a 3-lot subdivision. Make it shorter, yeah.
Okay, I just skipped the accidents, by the way, it's over there now.
If somebody comes to us with a 3-lot subdivision, we had some concerns, we could actually require, in our
Yes.
discretion, we could require it. But
Yes.
we didn't on this because you already presented the traffic.
Yes. I like coming here on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Just jumping to the real main issue of this development and the subdivision, there was concern in each application about site distances at the driveways themselves. What we've done for this application, and as I've given you, as the town engineer has said, we've microanalyzed this really to give you great detail for each very specific driveway, which has different conditions on Chatham Road in front of the site itself. In the last application, I gave you, I would consider a conservative approach. I said 10%. There was some confusion about 0% and 10%, but it was 10%. Forgetting that, we in Huntington actually did this work, the portion of the work, decided the actual grades, and I'll get to that, for each section of Chatham Road, for each driveway in each direction. For a driveway like this, we look at stopping site distance. Stopping site distance is a measurement of, I'm on the road, I'm on Chatham Road driving, and you're pulling out of the driveway. My eye height is 3.5 feet above the pavement. That's eye height. Stopping site distance is a measurement that is 2 feet above the pavement or the object, a dog, 2 feet above pavement. So it's not even the same eye height of 3.5 feet. So I'm looking at from 3.5 feet to 2 feet, and that's how we come up with these measurements based on the measurements by the surveyor, civil engineer in this case. We develop what is the required stopping site distance based on speed, based on grade, and based on the location, of course. Now, in the chart that I showed you with the volumes, and part of the confusion one of the other times was the speed, and there was some confusion. The posted speed limit on area roads in this neighborhood, if you will, is 25 miles per hour. There's no posted speed limit sign on Chatham Road. I used the 25 miles per hour as a reference in one of my charts, and there was some confusion with that. That's the posted speed limit. I just gave it as a reference. We actually measured the speed on Chatham Road at the same time we did the volumes last year. Speed data from the state of Connecticut, if I asked them for speed data on one of the state highways, because we don't have it, they'll go back as far as 3 years. So using data from last May, a year ago May, is still valid, just like the volumes are. So the data I'm using here is still valid. If I had to go out and do new speed studies and new traffic counts, we would have done that. We don't skip that step because it's not worth it for us to skip that. We go out and do it again. We don't need that with data that's 14, 15 months old at this point. Speed was eastbound. You can see there's a typo right there. It's 23 miles per hour. I'm sorry, looking at the volume. That's why I was confused. Eastbound, uphill, 22 miles per hour. That's the 85th percentile speed of the motors traveling on the road. Westbound, down the hill, 23 miles per hour. So it's 22 up, 23 down. There was some confusion on the 23, the 22, and the 25 in one of my other charts from a previous traffic report. So the 25 I don't have in the chart anymore. It's in the footnote, if you will, just for reference purposes. And the speed of 22 downhill, uphill, and 23 downhill is part of the analysis that we use. To be conservative, we use 23 uphill and downhill for each driveway. Now, I'm not going to get into great deal with this, but it's in the appendix of the report. You know, typically we use the charts that are provided by the Connecticut Department of Transportation in their design manual, which is from a federal manual that we all use. There was some concern about that using the chart, so we went to the equation. This is in the back of the report. It's simply the equation where you plug in the speed, you plug in the grade, you have factors that you use as far as the stopping sight distance and so on. Keep in mind, this is stopping sight distance on a wet pavement. So it's a worst case scenario. It's not a dry pavement, it's wet pavement. I've never mentioned that before, but that's, you know, it's more critical. This is the chart. We did it for each one, and we developed the required stopping sight distance for each driveway. And they're in the appendix of the report. This table, table 3, and this is a slightly updated table, Jim, to match the information that's provided tonight on the Huntington plans. We have the sight distance, the stopping sight distance available for each driveway, looking to the right and looking to the left.
Mike, can I just pass this out to everyone?
Yes.
This is a revised.
That's the updated table.
Yeah.
It matches this.
There's a slight revision of
Right there.
one number.
Right there.
And it's that number, 235. And the traffic report that was submitted to you.
It was
said
350.
350, and that was based on that other map that we revised as well. So now we brought it to 235, but it's still within.
It's still within the requirements for stopping sight distance for the speed and the grades.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'm going to pass the new table 3 out. This is the utmost up.
You have a new table 3, okay. Okay.
And without going through each number, because I'll do that in a minute on a different graphic, we identify the available distance, which is the measurement provided by Huntington. We provided the required stopping sight distance based on 3.5 feet to 0.2 feet at the driveway. And that's simply, for me as a driver, to stop in time as far as you pulling out of a driveway. That's stopping sight distance, and that's what the town requires that we do, and that's based on discussions we had with the town some time ago. Essentially what this table tells us is that we have adequate stopping sight distance for each driveway in each direction based on the profiles, the grades, and the speed. So we meet their standards, we meet the requirements, and I see a question coming.
Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Sorry. Thanks, Mr. Galante. I guess, you know, looking at the maps and all, the real place, if we were going to have concern, because is the center lot, and it's the right and westbound. That's where the center lot driver coming out of the driveway is going to have to interact with the driver coming around the curve, which is well laid out, by the way, in the smaller handouts we got. Very well done, because that's really it. You know, I mean, that because you're meeting the 150 number there, right at 150.
Yes.
And I guess, and this is wet conditions, you're saying?
The requirement that I'm giving you is on wet pavement conditions, yes.
Right. Because,
so
I mean,
it's greater.
Yeah, because, I mean, otherwise, you're at, you know, 150, 125, on the required side, you're 125, 157, 128, 150, 133, 142, and you're, you know, 235, 200, 250, 200, but it's this, the one that sticks out is where that center lot interacts with that corner.
Yeah, and
you know, that's, I'll be honest with you, I mean, like, that's what's left for me in terms of some concern. So
no, and
you know, go ahead.
It's a fair question.
It's just right on the numbers.
That's fine.
But there may be that you were very conservative, so I want you to talk a little bit about what.
You know, in our requirements, following the DOT standards, if this was a DOT plan, and I'm giving them the site distances, they would want me to give them exactly what the requirement is.
Right.
150 feet.
Right.
They don't want me to show 160 feet. They want 150. What we're showing every location, except that one location, which is right on the money, if you will,
Right.
is the greater distance that we have. That driveway, and it was mentioned before, it happened to be the same number, it's 22 feet or 23
Right,
feet. The house was shifted to the west. We call that in some respects reverse engineering.
Right.
We've moved the house, we've moved the driveway
Further
to
down the-
meet that standard that we need to meet, which is 150 feet of stopping site distance. There's
So that's
nothing,
the center lot movement is really to meet that when you're coming, basically before you had a driveway, there wasn't, was
Further to
maybe
the
too
east.
close in terms of its interaction with the
Yeah.
curve. Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
There was two reasons, as mentioned. One was to match that stopping site distance that I need, 150 feet, based on the speed. And it was a better layout for the house location on the property. So that's another
It
reason.
centers on the property, absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with me
More
showing
aesthetically
150 feet. Now, keep in mind, if I was to go out and do it, and I said this last time, to do a speed study at that curve, it's not going to be 22 or 23 miles per hour. It's going to be something less.
Really?
Absolutely. My 150 feet sight line requirement
It's a 22 or
is based on 23.
Right, 23, right.
It's based on
Okay.
23.
So
So
in other
I
words-
can show that number a lot lower as far as a requirement.
Right. So in other words, if it was 17, for example, that number might be 105.
Absolutely.
In
Yeah.
other words. So is this
Yeah.
based on this 22, that 23 number?
Yeah, and I try to be conservative, as you know, except maybe you don't with site generation, site, well, I'll meet you for ice cream later. But don't be concerned, and don't, excuse the way I'm saying that,
No, sure.
that we show them 150 and we need 150. That's how the state of Connecticut wants us to do it on their roads, to give them the distance that's required and nothing more.
Right.
There may be more available, but we don't show it.
Okay.
So I'm using the 150 because we backed into that by moving the driveway to get the 150. Could I get 170? I could move the house further. But we're trying to keep it set as far as location on the property itself.
So your opinion as a professional traffic engineer that looked at this area, did an appropriate study, is that, people are going around this curve, in fact, slower than what you used as a measurable distance. They're going, in your estimate, somewhere in the 17, 18, not 22, 23.
Correct.
But you based this on the 22, 23.
That's correct. So I'm comfortable with the number of 150 as far as the stopping site distance for the center driveway in that one direction.
Mr. Suter has a question?
Yes, sir.
In my experience, the property with the lot with the worst sight lines was lot 1, particularly the view to the left. And I know I see here you have a required SSD of 125 feet for that lot. And you show a distance available of 250.
Yes.
How did you arrive at the 250?
This 250 is measured in the roadway, in Chatham Road, in the travel lane, and it's the distance, it's a measured distance that you can see from a point 3, if you look at the map here, 3.5 feet from here, 3.5 feet of eye height here, that's the car, to a point of an object that's 2 feet above the pavement,
Right.
I'll say an animal, a dog, probably a deer,
Right.
in front of the driveway. That's how it's measured, it's 2 feet above pavement at the driveway. As a driver coming, in this case, uphill, and I see you pulling out of the driveway,
Yeah.
I need time to react and stop my car uphill on wet pavement. I have more than enough stopping site distance to do that. It's measured in the road. You're confusing with intersection site distance, which is measured back on the driveway itself.
What I'm concerned about is the angle of the line that's drawn. It looks like it crosses part of the lot, and I know that lot 1, the western half of lot 1 has a very steep grade and it's very heavily wooded, so it blocks vision.
The measurement of 250 is along the road. This line that's shown on the plan is just to show you the distance and the measurement. If you were to measure along the travel lane in that arc on Chatham Road, that's the 250 feet. If you measure that line with a scale, that line is not 250 feet long. The arc is on the travel lane. It's how you measure it, the traveling of the car on the road. It's showing the distance.
But you're sure that the line is in the roadbed at all points?
It's on the road, the measurement. The way it's shown here is just a straight line from the driveway to that point that's measured 250. The actual 250 is in the road to that driveway.
Oh, I see.
Okay?
The straight line is just real.
It's just to give you the distance, if you will.
Okay,
All
because
right? It's not going over private property. maybe that's what you're thinking.
Because the foliage is a real problem at that location.
Yeah, but that's not how we measure stopping sight distance. And I'll just,
Does the stopping site distance available require the removal of any existing vegetation?
no, we made that statement early on because we were removing vegetation along the property frontage. We're still assuming that. But in reality, for stopping sight distance, you can have vegetation right up to the property line because it's measured in the road, as opposed to an intersection sight distance for an intersection where you measure 15 feet back.
That's right.
Okay, there's a difference.
Driver coming down, I got it.
That's the difference.
But the line of sight is visually, when you're looking at something, is a straight line, right?
But it's from this point here, where the road curves, if you will, to me pulling out of that driveway in your travel lane.
Oh, so, okay.
That's the measurement.
So in other words,
It's not a straight line.
I'm seeing you in the road where I am in the road, not...
Or you might be in a minute.
Where I might be, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. It's the point where that car that's coming out of the driveway enters
Yeah.
the lane, so, all right.
Stopping sight distance is my time to react and stop and not hit you.
So in other words, if you, for example, if I nose my car out but not into the travel lane, there can't be an accident because I'm not...
You're still on the driveway. Right.
So where you're measuring is to where that point...
If there was a
travel
collision,
lane,
if there was a collision. Yes.
There's more, we talked about including the drainage reports. I'm going to assume we want to completely disregard the traffic report from last time and just use this.
This is a whole new traffic report. It'd be best just to have this.
I think so.
Yeah.
'Cause there's-
And that's why we did this.
Yeah, because I look, if I compare some other numbers that where the driveway wasn't moved, I'm not sure how that changed, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to use.
That's why I didn't give you just a letter with sightlines. I gave you the entire report, accidents, volumes, speed, and our recommendations.
So we'll say the old traffic report is not part of this record. Right?
We're willing to live with that.
That's correct.
We agree with that. That's probably,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. These graphics, plans prepared by Huntington give you the sight lines, stopping sight lines for each driveway individually and on separate sheets. And I'll just conclude with, the town engineer reviewed all of this in great detail and agrees with everything and says that we do provide adequate stopping sight distance based on the standards that the town uses and the state of Connecticut uses. And I believe there's an email where she says something to that effect. If you don't, I have...
We have it right here.
Okay. Because we wanted to make sure that we were doing it and everyone was comfortable, and, I want to make sure you were comfortable what we are doing and how we're presenting it to you. We went through the effort of giving you, updated tables and cleaning up the footnotes, so what it really comes down to. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Any other questions for Mr. Galante?
And one last note, if I may.
Yeah.
May I?
You may.
Okay. We talked about traffic on Chatham Road. It's a local residential street, pretty much similar to where I live. And in all fairness, we've heard this many, many, many times in our side as far as discussion. You have a car about every 5 minutes passing this site. So and that's why I said before, it's not a traffic study, traffic volume, impacts, levels of service, measured delay. It's about sight distance at the driveways. And I think we're very comfortable as far as what we presented as far as meeting the requirements for stopping sight distance at each of the driveways, which was a concern of yours and is a legitimate concern. And with that, I'll conclude and...
Anything else for Mr. Galante? No. Thank you, Mr. Galante.
Thank you.
Mr. Galante, just to redirect, at its highest usage on the road based on your numbers, there's one car every 4.5 minutes.
Yes, approximately, yes.
And its most intense use.
Yes.
And many times it's significantly less than that. So this is what you would consider a very low-use road.
Yes.
Okay, and yet we have all the sight distances we need, and we also have pretty much the safest type of driveway you can have. So each one of our lots, you'll be able to pull out head first with your car, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And it meets all standards.
And it meets all standards. And you consider this, in your expertise as an expert in traffic, to be an extremely safe driveways and safe sight distances for this subdivision?
Based on our analysis, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any more questions for Mr. Galante and anything to do with traffic or the driveways or sight distances?
Does not appear that we do.
Okay. time, Mr. Vice Chairman, other than reserving some time for rebuttal if there's any opposition, I would just like to state that I think my client has gone above and beyond with the now third application to try to present an application that meets all of your requirements of your zoning regulations and your subdivision regulations, and has gone out of their way to continue to try to work with this commission to try to design not only a very safe subdivision in regards to the sight lines, which I think we've addressed on an extremely low-use road, and adding these 3 houses. And we wanted to present, and we didn't even ask to be, as you correctly stated, to have a traffic study, but we wanted to have one to show you that Mr. Karp tries to design extremely safe and beautiful projects, and that's why we came to you initially with that. I also think that we've shown that in regards to the drainage issues, that we have done everything and are reducing the actual water runoff into the storm system. Will actually improve and are actually doing some of the town's work in increasing the size of the pipe in the road, adding 2 more catch basins, and doing everything we can to catch the water. The work to do that is going to be about $100,000 alone. And we also, I think, went the extra yard to do all these test borings. I know there was concern during the first application regarding blasting and things like that, and that's not going to be done, and I think that was a benefit for everybody, including the neighbors, to know that that's not going to be necessary. So based on that, I believe this re-subdivision application meets all of the requirements of your zoning regulations and your subdivision regulations, and I think it must be approved, and we respectfully request that you do so, and I'll reserve any further comments to rebuttal after if there's any opposition. Thank you.
There's nothing else for the applicant, right? Okay, I'll open up the public comment. If any members of the public wish to be heard, just come up to the microphone, state your name, and speak to us. And your address.
I could pass them.
Just be careful of the cords. This is Schiller, right? Yes, of course. Of course I do.
Good evening, members of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my opposition to this developer's plans to build 3 houses on the most minimum of lot sizes for 50 Chatham Road. We residents, and I'm speaking on behalf of the family that lives below me, which is the McMillans, at the bottom of the hill, where they get a lot of water, and the Lawlers that live above me. We 3 directly face where all these driveways and the new houses will be. So we residents feel this is the wrong development for this street. While it may seem that traffic safety issues are being resolved, we are still very concerned with the safety of walkers and children playing in the street. There is now a new neighbor who has moved in right next door to 50 Chatham Road with a 6-year-old. And I just want to insert another thought. If there are new houses being built there may be more children out there with the need for the increased school bus traffic right at those driveways where it meets Chatham Road. So you're going to have definitely more cars. It is low traffic, no question, with respect to Mr. Galante, and certainly his professionalism, which I respect, and integrity. But I live on the street, and I know how fast I drive up and down the road, and I don't think I drive 17 miles an hour up and down that road. Anyway, as I said, I believe that there is going to be much more increased school bus traffic with twice a day at least in the morning and afternoon to pick up and drop off the children going to school. We're very concerned with the very real possibility of unforeseeable consequences which result from disturbances to the ledge. Now, I understand now that there's a condition that there's no blasting, which I appreciate very much. We all will do appreciate that. But it still seems to me that there is so much rock ledge there that there's still going to be quite a bit of disturbance in the area with 3 basements having to be built and 3 houses. And we're very concerned with what's going to be the unforeseen result of all of this disturbance to the rock ledge of the area. The submitted proposal, and please excuse my hoarse voice, I'm sorry. I sound like an elephant or something. The submitted proposal for 3 houses will create a small cluster of houses, very dense in comparison to the surrounding lots and homes, and completely out of character with this neighborhood. We residents would not be here in opposition if the developer would cooperate with the neighbors and build 2 houses at 50 Chatham Road, of the type that he so proudly exhibits in his brochures. He can still make a good profit without creating a detriment to our street. Please do not allow this application to be approved. And I just remembered one other thing. I believe there was a mention that a new road was being built on our street and that they would fix the pipe at the bottom. Well, the road has been built. I live there. There's a new road on Chatham and there's a new road on Random, and they didn't fix the pipe. They didn't make a new big pipe. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mrs. Schiller. Anyone else wish to be heard?
Good evening, members of the commission. Thank you again for allowing us to speak this evening. My name is Andrew Deck. I live at 16 Chatham Road, and my wife, Cami Deck, and I both oppose the re-subdivision at 50 Chatham Road. That's the only thing I really want to say tonight, other than ask you to please question the applicant as to the maintenance on the system, the water retention system. If people buy and sell those homes, we want to know that we're protected. We heard earlier in a hearing that there was required maintenance by a homeowners association. So we'd like to understand how that's going to be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deck. And any other members of the public wish to be heard on this application? Other members of the public? Okay. Hearing none, Mr. Walsh, you rebuttal or close?
Sure. Just to address a couple of the issues that were raised, and whatever was submitted to the commission by the first woman, if I can get a copy of that, that would be great.
You know, I tell you, Mr. We should get you. We'll get a copy. She read it too. So
oh, okay,
thank
great.
you, Mrs. Schiller. You can take time to read it if you want.
I listened and I made some points while she was discussing, so I'm ready to go. In regards to her concerns regarding children, and you know, we're very concerned, and the applicant, my client's very concerned about that as well. It's one of the reasons why we're trying to follow these sight line distances exactly the way they're supposed to go. It's our hope that the 3 houses that we get approved for have children in them as well, and we want all, you know, as much safety as possible, and that's why we're adhering to all those standards. In regards to the school bus and the increased traffic, the school bus goes by one time. The same school bus is going by anyway, so it's not like there's going to be increased traffic from more school buses. The school bus goes by and has drop-offs and pick-offs, so there's not going to be any more increased traffic in that regard. In regards to the 17 miles an hour up and down the street, I just want to redirect that. Mr. Galante's testimony was that it was 22 miles up the hill, 23 miles down the hill. What he was talking about, 17 miles an hour, was at that curve, because it's a natural thought that when you hit a curve as severe as that, which is almost a 90-degree angle, you have to slow. Your eye sees something and you need to slow down your car to be able to make the turn. So that's what he was talking about at the point of the curve. Yes. Yes, so that he would... Yes. And am I saying anything incorrect? No, it's just...
So it might be 22 or 23 coming down, but as they hit the curve, they're dropping to 17, and
yes.
they are accelerating
Yes.
afterward beyond that point.
Exactly. Just as you come up the hill and you have to go make a bear to the left, you would slow down again. You'd probably hit your brake lights to be able to make that. In regards to the rock ledge and disturbance, I think our expert, and Mr. Peterla, discussed that. We've had the test borings drilled, dug out. He witnessed them while they were being done and did the proper measurements so that there's going to be no blasting. And in regards to that, we don't see any unforeseen disturbance because it's not, we're not taking out ledge. We're not going through ledge. It's really a shale that we're going through and that we're going to be removing. It's not ledge. Is that correct? Okay. So our hope is to actually build on the ledge, to build our footing on the ledge itself, so that it's the most secure. And we would disagree in regards to that our houses are going to be out of character. We actually believe our houses are going to be actually in character with the neighborhood. They were designed that way. None of them are going to look the same. They're going to be similar, but none of them are going to look the same. But we are trying to blend it in as kind of a marketing ploy. It's to our benefit to make the neighborhood look like one cohesive neighborhood. So we don't believe our houses are going to be out of character at all. And further, we are building on the same size lots. There was always 3 lots that were approved for the original subdivision map when it came down, and we're just looking to return to the same size lot, just like everybody else has, and build a single-family house in a normal size lot. And in regards to Mr. Deck's comments, in regards to the maintenance of the system, we have designed that system so that there's a manhole cover that homeowner will be told by the builder how to clean out. I mean, it's very simple. You just pick it up, so that maintenance on that is pretty simple. So, and if something were to happen where it got clogged, tell me, Mr. Petrullo, if I'm wrong, it would just start overflowing at the site. You would know it.
That's correct. Also, again, from the last submittal, Laura Pooley made us put cleanouts. If you remember the plan, there's trench drains at the end of the driveway, so when the water comes down, hits the trench drain, and before it enters the stormwater system, there's a structure, it's a cleanout with sump, okay? That means any sand that comes down the driveway will get in that before it gets into the detention system. And again, it's a plastic pipe with a cap on it. It's pretty easy to open and then clean out. That's even before it gets into the stormwater system.
So Ms. Pulley thought about that. She made it a requirement. We had no problem doing that, and will abide by that and her recommendations in regards to that. And we redesigned our system so that it would have that and make maintenance very simple for a homeowner. And that's all I have in regards to my rebuttal.
So I was just going back because we don't have that report for us. So we'll look at that report again, make it a part of our record, and if we need conditions from the
I request,
report from the town engineer.
I agree, Mr. Vice Chairman, that all Ms. Pulley's previous reports be made a part of the record.
And we get condition approval on
Yes.
satisfaction of some of the things she recommended. Okay.
Sure.
Carp? Arnold Carp, I'd actually be the builder of this. As our third time in front of you, I think we've handled sort of each one of the issues that has come up in front of the commission. There was a prior existing home here that basically would have had as much hard surface, almost more than what we're building, that had none of this detention, none of the erosion or controls put in place. It was a rather large house, had driveway, swimming pool, so this is not pristine property that has been forested for 50 years. This was a very large house that had a fire, and we purchased the property after that. And I understand the neighbors, but I think we have met and exceeded all the requirements. We're doing about $100,000 and $125,000 worth of work on the street, and that should help alleviate some of the flooding towards the bottom of the street. We can't be responsible for fixing all the town road, but we're doing sort of off-site improvements that would normally be for a shopping center. And I hear the traffic concerns, but this is, having sat there as recently as this afternoon, this is a road that has minimal to no traffic relative to most of the roads that I drive on in Fairfield each day. So I look forward to having this approved and beginning construction. Thank you.
One more question for you, Mr. Wall. Sure. Just, again, we're not talking about pending litigation. You mentioned an appeal and a reversed application. Just a question, I think Mr. O'Clair was asking. If this application is approved, are any pending appeals going to be withdrawn?
Yes, that's the plan. You know, we're trying to move this forward. My clients always wanted to start building on the property. He's been in a hold for over a year. You know, we were hoping that this would get done before the summertime so we can get building during the good summer months. And we're just trying to, work with this commission to do what's best for the town and to start building as soon as possible. So yes, that is the plan, and I've spoken to the town attorney in that regard as well.
Okay. Does anybody else have any further questions?
And just so everybody knows, we have an upcoming court hearing on both, and the judge wants to know how tonight went, and when you make a decision.
Yeah, we typically don't decide these tonight, but
I know.
we move it to public hearing pretty quickly for you, and I'm sure we'll it'll be on our agenda at our next meeting as we always do.
Thank you very much.
We'll do that. Okay. Nothing further. I will close the hearing, and we're done.